First things first, let's start with where would you say that we find Rock's mental at the start of season three after surviving that cliffhanger at the end of last season?
I think where you find her immediately because the night picks up at it's the same night when we open on season three. You know, she's in shock, obviously. The things that have transpired, you're looking at her in real time, trying to navigate and figure out. You're watching her think quick on her feet with the whole like FBI and everyone coming into her orbit. You're actually having to watch her be the genius that she is and spin the story and really get everyone out, with like hopefully no one goes to jail. So you're watching her once again have to do the thing that she's great at doing, right? Why she's the boss. But then, as the season goes on, she's having to grapple with all of those things. And, you find her at a point where she decides that maybe she wants to do something else. For 2 seasons, this is all she's wanted, was to be in the game and to be at the top. But then in season 3, because of things that have happened in season 2 and watching how the relationship with her son is not good, in a good place, she has decided to focus on getting him back because there's no more lies she can tell. She can't spin anything else. He sees her, he knows her, and she's seeing him change at a quick rate. And so, the mother in her is terrified,
Yeah, and speaking of her relationship with Kanan, can you talk a little bit about how his decision making coming into that trickles into season 3? How does that really affect Rock, and how does that affect her believing that he can never step in and take over the game?
I don't think she really I think she still thinks that he won't do it, right? Like, I think she's going to try as hard to kind of manipulate him into all the reasons why he won't do it, right? But there is also a big part of her that's not naive and knows that this is what's going to happen. I think at this point, he is still very green. He thinks he knows things. He thinks because he's experienced certain things in season 1 and now in season 2 that he's ready to branch out on his own. But there is still danger that presents itself for him. So for her, she's trying to, she knows that he's going to do what he wants to do, but she just wants him to be smarter about that. But she's already fractured the relationship, so he's not going to take no business advice from her right now because he don't want to talk to her. So you have to watch her navigate this new relationship that her and her son is in.
Yeah, and then just lastly here, what would you say are the effects of Rock's love life as the result of her being this boss and this problem solver that she is?
I think that in her dream, obviously she wants to be loved. Obviously there is this dream scenario where she would meet the perfect man and he would sweep her off her feet. He wouldn't be afraid of her power and her confidence and, just how she moved, And I think she loves the idea of having this life but she knows that's not something that's real. Right? I think she's fully capable of love, to love someone and be loved, but it's not something she is actively looking for, hence why Symphony did not work out. Symphony, he served as this sort of, maybe I'll try it, like maybe it's different, but it became dangerous because when you care about someone, it makes them less safe. And that has always been the thing in her life, is protecting people and is it worth it or not? So Rock doesn't know. I think she always keeps it open to maybe it'll happen for her, but there isn't really anyone who can handle her right now, who can handle where she is in this part of her journey.
Absolutely. Well, I love seeing you portray Rock, Patina, and I'm so excited for you. And congratulations on season 4.
Yeah, thank you.
Being revealed before season 3 even starts. So that just speaks to
Right.
your talent, and the whole cast talent. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
MeKai, I'm going to actually start with you because where would you say we meet Kanan at the top of season 3 versus where we will be left with him by the end of this season?
I think you meet Kanan again, just piecing it together around him. He's less naive than he was in season 1. Still giving people the benefit of the doubt. You know, he's wrestling with just the very notions of what's happening around him, as you know, most people do in certain times. So that's where you'll continue to see him kind of wrestle with things, is, you know, trying to figure out who he is as a person, but also, you know, who he means to people around him too.
Yeah, and Antonio, as we watch Kanan grapple with discovering who he is, how would you say that shifts or changes the dynamics between Famous, or within the friendship between Famous and Kanan?
Well, I mean, with any friendship, once, you know, either person starts to shift their persona, I'd say, or characteristics, there's gonna be a dynamic change, and there's gonna be an adjustment, you know. So there's obviously gonna be an adjustment between the two of us, but I don't think that there's going to be anything that happens that's, you know, it's not gonna get to the point where it's not Kanan and Famous. You get what I'm saying? So I definitely understand where you're coming from, but every friendship changes over a period of time, especially the long friendships. So I do feel that there's going to be a dynamic shift, but that comes with life. So
That's a parallel change too.
Yeah, exactly. So I do understand where the question comes from, and I completely agree.
Yeah, and then just lastly, for both of you guys, everyone is also seemingly looking to reinvent themselves in this upcoming season. So can you talk to me a little bit about how that rings true for your characters? And we can start with you first again, MeKai.
Again, you know, Kanan is just trying to figure out, truthfully, with you know, the new information that he picked up, and the answers that he gets to questions that he also asked and didn't ask in certain regard. He's just figuring out, you know, what to do with the pieces of the puzzle that have been laid in front of him, how to deal with the hand that he's been given. Can't speak right now. I don't know. But that's the vibe that he's kind of going for this season. And you know, it's fun to bring it to life. Fun to portray that one, for real.
Yeah, and Antonio, how about Famous? In what ways do we see him reinvent himself in this season, or kind of start from a fresh slate?
I think Famous starts to realize, you know, the foundation that he thought he had wasn't as strong as it may have been, and he has to start to accept what the real world actually is. Mm-hmm. So I think the change that we're going to see in Famous is basically, especially in like reinventing the character, I feel like it's just going to be more so me realizing what is possible, what isn't possible, and what is within my reach as a character.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and congratulations on season 4.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited to just hop right in. So if you had to explain the theme of this new season of Raising Kanan in a phrase or a sentence, what would you have to say and why?
I think, you know, I go back to something I say a lot, which is essentially it's family, you know, and because, you know, this is at its heart a family drama, you know, and I think the pieces of the series that people seem to really respond to the most are the family stuff, to be honest, the sort of the interpersonal dynamics that exist between these characters, whether it's Rock and Kanan, Kanan and Jukebox, Marvin and Rock, you know, I mean, that is really sort of what the show sort of is built around. And so I think this season we sort of, you know, we double down on that in interesting ways. I think you see that there's a lot of tension, or sort of emerging tension, between Rock and Kanan. He's slowly but surely becoming aware of sort of who his mother is, and not who she is in terms of her job, but who she is as a mother, frankly. And I think he has real questions about that, as he should. And I think also, you know, you see Jukebox sort of questioning her own role within this family and what she wants and who she wants to be. And so it's that's sort of a constant conversation amongst these characters, sort of internally and externally, you know? And it's a conversation I think that everyone has about themselves, right? Like, we're born into our families. We don't have a choice. And sometimes that can be really complicated, you know? And you know, we're just coming out of Thanksgiving. I'm sure, you know, Thanksgiving, there's always something that happens at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So, you know, it's that time of the year.
Yeah, and you know, we ended, speaking of just family drama, we ended season 2 with a hell of a cliffhanger as a result of Kanan's decisions. In what ways will his decision making continue to impact everyone that he's in relationship with in this new season?
I mean, I think, you know, the thing that's so interesting about Kanan, and you know, I have teenage sons, is like, you know, his brain isn't fully developed. And when they're that age, they do dumb shit, and they don't really understand, you know, how what they're doing impacts the people around them. And that's sort of been Kanan's problem from, you know, episode 1 of season 1, which is that he doesn't fully understand the repercussions of what he's doing. And yet at the same time, he is a very thoughtful, self-aware kid, you know? And so he remains obviously at the heart of the series. And I think a lot of what he does just sort of radiates out to all the other characters, especially his mother, who remains focused on, you know, protecting him at any cost. As you know, as dumb as he can be, or as irresponsible as he can be, or as hot-headed as he can be, she's still his mother. And she's like, I have to protect him. So I think that forces her and some of these other characters into places and positions that they don't want to be, but they find themselves there because of decisions Kanan has made.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Sascha, and congratulations on season 4.
Thank you so much.
For you.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
We were introduced to your character, Stefano, during the cliffhanger of last season. How would you say we meet him in this new season versus how we will be left with him by the end?
Well, I think, I mean, and I'm just conjecture now because I'm not writing, I'm just thinking. But what I think happened in last season was we went from a very adversarial relationship with Rock to a not so adversarial relation at the end.
Yes, I would agree. And you know, your character is all about power. Will we see him struggle with maintaining that in this installation of raising Kanan?
No, I think he's really has. In this season, he has a grasp on it this season, and he gets the things done he wants done get done. So I don't see him struggling this past season. I don't know what's coming. You know what I mean? I don't know what's coming, but I think he's pretty much in control last season.
Yeah, and speaking of that control,
I'm saying.
Oh yeah, and speaking of that control in this season, what would you say? Like, what are the dynamics? Like, can you dive a little deeper into that control factor and what he really has a handle on?
Well, he first of all, he wanted to get rid of his our late comrade from Newark. He wanted that. He got it done, and he's if you think about it, he's trying to insidiously get between Rock and Marvin. So there's some psychological stuff going on as well. The character is smarter than the average bear, and he uses that.
Yeah, and then just lastly here, Tony, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned from portraying Stefano, and how do you think that will resonate with viewers?
Well, I was, I've never played a bad guy like this. Italian. I did a movie once where I played with Sam Jackson, where I played a mafia guy, a wannabe mafia guy. And but I really haven't done it a lot, you know. And to tell you the truth, I talked to a lot of my Italian actor friends who've had to only do that. You know, that's what's there for them. And so there's some envy going both ways. You know, I would love to have done it, and they had to do it. But anyway, when this came along, I wasn't sure even about doing it, and then I did it, and I worked with Michael Rispoli and the wonderful production of the show, and I was hooked. I mean, I'm just, it's simple as that. It's a great place to work. The writing is terrific. The directing is great. The actors are great. I mean, you know, you get to work with Patina Miller. What, are you kidding me? And London Brown. Forget it. It's unbelievable. And Joey too, and Antonio. I mean, I'll go through the whole. I marvel at what they do. I think they're, you know, it's a spectacular ensemble.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Tony. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Janique, thank you very much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Joey, we will get more insight into your character's family dynamics in this season. In what ways will this help us peel back those layers that make up Unique?
Well, you know, Unique is the younger brother of Ronnie. So I feel like this is the first time that people can see Unique kind of, how can I word it? You know, like, I feel like even from the teaser that just came out, you see the excitement in Unique. You almost see his inner child a bit. Like, wow, Ronnie's home, like my big brother, like, you know, and you get to see a little bit of more vulnerability from Unique this season, which I think adds a very interesting layer.
Yeah, and Grantham, your character Ronnie, he's a newcomer for season 3 of Raising Kanan. How would you say we're going to meet him at the beginning of this season versus where we're going to be left with him by the end?
I think with Ronnie, you only meet him one way, and that's stone cold in your face. He's not one to mince words. He's not one of many words. So I feel like when people meet Ronnie, their reaction is going to be abrupt. And very much like, oh, okay, so we're not gonna mess with him. And I think like what Joey said about our family dynamic, seeing Ronnie as the older brother, because we've always seen Unique as the dude in charge, and so it's kind of cool to see that brother thing of like, oh, really? Like, you do have an older brother, and you weren't the one always running things. Like, so I think that's what we get when we meet Ronnie.
I love that, and I'm super excited to just watch it all play out. And just lastly for you, Joey, last season we ended with like one hell of a cliffhanger where you ended up coming to Rock's rescue. Will we see a shift in the relationship between you two in this season? And how do you think that will affect your character Unique in the long run?
Well, you know, I think despite these two characters historically having moments of wanting to tear each other's heads off, I think there was always an undeniable chemistry between them. So I think, you know, viewers could definitely expect to see that chemistry explored a little bit. And, you know, again, I think it plays on this new layer of Unique's vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens between Unique and Rock.
Yes, I'm excited. And thank you guys for your time, and congratulations on season 4. That's amazing. Let's just jump right in. How would you say that everyone, including your character Shannon, continues to be impacted by Kanan's decisions in this new season of Raising Kanan?
Oh my gosh, I think this is the beginning of when you see Kanan becoming older Kanan. You see the wheels turning, and so everyone's going to be impacted by him coming into his own and his own power, for lack of a better term, power. And yeah, everyone's affected by it, and you start to see that fire in him. I think it's exciting. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yes. And if you had to describe where we meet Shannon at the top of season 3 versus where we are left with her by the end, how would you describe that?
By the end of season 3?
Mm-hmm.
I would say her mind has been blown. I would say that.
Yeah, I like that. And just speaking of her mind being blown, in what ways is she just trying to figure out all of the pieces within just everything?
I mean, she is a cop. She's a detective. That's her job. And she is the one who pieces everything together and no one will listen. So she digs her heels in the more people tell her to stop. She's a stubborn bulldog. So yeah, she won't ever stop.
Yeah. And with her being as stubborn as she is, what are some of the things that you have learned while portraying this character? Like, what has she taught you about yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think she's taught me to stand up for myself and not take no for an answer. I could stand to be a little bit more stubborn in my own life and put my foot down and say no to things I don't want to do. So I've learned to say no and to kind of capture my inner strength playing her.
Yeah, and then just lastly, at the end of the second season, we have this amazing cliffhanger. And at the start of this new season, Rock is just trying to reinvent herself and pick up the pieces, if you will. In what ways does Shannon kind of go back to the drawing board, like all of the characters who are looking to ultimately reinvent themselves after the big showdown went down at the end of last season?
Oh man, I think that Shannon didn't take it as a cue to reinvent herself. I think she took it as a cue to dig in deeper and to further prove that she's right and not take no or leave it alone for an answer. She's never gonna leave it alone. She knows she's right.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shanley. I hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Shanique.
Can you walk me through if we will see any dynamics between Jukebox and her father change in this new installment of Raising Kanan?
I think the fans will be very, very happy with the direction that the relationship is going in.
I love that. And London, where would you say we're going to meet Marvin at the start of season 3 versus where we're going to find him at the end of the season?
We're going to find him, besides, being injured and still trying to deal with getting through the injury. So we're going to find him, in repair mode on all the vestiges of his past from season 2. I would say repair would be the biggest thing, not only physically, but emotionally and psychologically and that sort of thing. Because even with the daughter, everything is just really repaired. Even with the stuff with the dynamic between him and Lou, as opposed to some of the conflict that they had as brothers, I think people will find where their relationship kind of goes into, it's a nice twist there too.
Yeah, and speaking of just like the relationship between the siblings, for you, Malcolm, can you talk a little bit about Rock's relationship with her brothers? Will it evolve or be impacted in any way in this season as a result of that crazy cliffhanger that we had at the end of season 2?
Of course, she's been so diabolical in her scheming. It's bound to affect the relationships. It got to. You do all that such kind of shit, like it's gonna happen. Like it is what it is, But I think that in her mind, I think that's part of the problem. In her mind, she doesn't think that any of the relationships are changing or should change. And so when they do, she's genuinely shocked. My son don't like me. How could he? I only lied to him about who his daddy was and made him kill him. Why he tripping? I only took my little brother, who's like my surrogate sons, only dream and ruined it. Like she be really confused. And so I think it's kind of messed up, but it is things will and have to change. They just got to.
Yeah, and speaking of things changing, I kind of want to shift gears here and ask about Kanan. So this question is for all three of you, and we can start with you, Hailey. How would you say that your character is impacted by Kanan's decision making throughout this season, especially with him like coming into himself, if you will?
Girl. So the thing about Juke and Kanan's relationship has always been Juke. It's always like, I don't know how many times we've seen, Kanan and Rock have a fight and Rock looks at Juke and is like, okay, now go fix it. You know what I mean? Like Juke is just kind of the caretaker and the babysitter and the therapist and secret keeper. And all I'm gonna say is I think she's getting tired.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about you, London?
Kanan, and at one point, I like his girl too as a character because, you get to season 1 and Kanan can barely stand the sight of blood. Now, Kanan is the guy pulling the trigger and everything. So to the point where even in season 2, Marva couldn't even really keep track of him as much. But we find Mark still trying to check his nephew because it's still his nephew. So he will try to check him even on behalf of Rock at times. So that twist on Kanan that people have been waiting to see, I think they're going to start seeing. Because everyone was just like, man, he's not Kanan. I'm like, people don't just become power overnight. Like, there are steps along the way, and I think we get to see some of that.
Yeah, agreed. I don't really know what the question was, so don't ask me.
Oh, yeah. So we'll end with you, Malcolm. But the question is, how is your character impacted by Kanan's decision making in this season?
Our whole lives are screwed because of this little boy, and they have been, and they will continue to be. That's the problem. It's not raising Kanan. It's somebody needs to raise Kanan. That's the name of the. It's crazy. None of us would have any of these issues if this little boy wasn't a brat. He's a brat. And if MeKai wasn't such a great actor and a humble spirited kid, I might forget that I'm not supposed to hate him. You know what I mean? Because I don't like his character at all. I think Kanan is an obnoxious piece of shit, little badass little boy who don't got no reason doing none of the stuff he did, and he messed up a perfectly fine program. But at the same time, one could argue that Kanan needed to mess up the program because something was innately wrong with our relationships and what we are doing. So someone could argue, if it wasn't for Kanan, Marvin's character doesn't go and find therapy. Jukebox doesn't try to find her dreams or try to disassociate from her family. And maybe I don't, if not for him. So maybe him being a little pain in the butt is a good thing.
That's a perfect way to end this interview. Thank you guys for your time and congratulations on season 4.
Thank you.